Let's say you want to own an undersea internet cable. Here's the first reality check. Right now, nearly 99% of all global data traffic isn't traveling through the air. Forget about satellites. This data moves through undersea cables that, in some places, are as thin as a garden hose, sitting in absolute darkness at depths capable of crushing a submarine. And until about 10 years ago, those cables were shared infrastructure. Consortiums of telecom companies built them together and split the capacity. Everyone paid market rates. The internet was a highway that anyone could rent a lane on. Then Google and Meta took one look at their bandwidth bills and made a move that quietly shifted who controls the internet. The fallout from that decision is still playing out in ways that hit close to home for everyone watching this video. But to understand how that happened, you need to understand what it actually takes to own one of these things, and the numbers are going to surprise you. A submarine cable is not a single product, it is a system, and the price depends entirely on distance, depth, and what you are trying to move. A short regional cable, 500 to 1,000 kilometers, connecting two neighboring countries or linking an island to the mainland, costs between $100 million and $300 million to build and deploy. A medium-haul cable in 3,000 to 6,000 kilometers runs $300 million to $600 million. This is where the serious capacity lives, the transatlantic routes, the cables that cloud providers and streaming platforms depend on every day. And then there are the transpacific cables. Los Angeles to Tokyo, 12,000 to 20,000 kilometers, with optical amplifiers every 60 to 100 kilometers to keep the signal alive. $600 million to $1.2 billion for a single cable system. The cable itself is not the most expensive part of owning a cable. The raw materials, fiber optic strands, steel armor, copper power conductor, run $20,000 to $40,000 per kilometer. The surprise is the ship. There are fewer than 60 specialized cable-laying vessels on the entire planet. If you want a ship today, you may wait 18 to 24 months for a slot. The day rate runs $200,000 to $400,000 per day. A transpacific installation voyage takes 45 to 90 days. Ship time alone adds $9 million to $36 million to your project before you have laid a single meter of cable. And if a bad splice forces the ship to turn back mid-ocean, the meter count resets. The day rate keeps running. Neil Tilbury spent 15 years designing backbone infrastructure for Tier 1 carriers before moving to the cable investment side. His rule, built from watching a dozen projects succeed and fail, the only operators who consistently made money on undersea cables were the ones who owned the entire chain: cable, landing station, and terrestrial backhaul. Partial ownership, he would say, is just expensive exposure. That logic is now the operating principle of the two largest cable builders on Earth, and neither of them is a telecom company. But what nobody expected was what the full cost structure looks like once the ship leaves port. Let's build the actual numbers for a 10,000-kilometer transpacific cable. Total project budget, $800 million. Marine survey and route planning. Mapping fault lines, shipping lanes, and fishing zones where trawlers drag nets at depths that reach your cable. $15 million to $25 million. Not optional. Cable manufacturing, the fiber, the armor, the conductor, $250 million to $350 million. Produced in fewer than 10 facilities worldwide capable of making deep water grade cable. Repeaters. A transpacific cable needs one optical amplifier every 60 to 100 kilometers. 100 to 170 units total, each costing $150,000 to $300,000. Each built to sit on the ocean floor for 25 years with zero maintenance access. Total $20 million to $50 million. Installation. Ship time at $200,000 to $400,000 per day for 60 to 80 sailing days. $20 million to $45 million before a single fault or weather delay. Landing stations, where the cable exits the ocean and connects to the terrestrial network. $20 million to $60 million per station. A transpacific system needs 2 to 6 stations. Regulatory and permitting. Every nation whose territorial waters you cross has jurisdiction. 2 to 4 years of process time. $10 million to $30 million. Assuming no government decides your route raises national security concerns. Maintenance reserve. Industry standard requires pre-funding a repair escrow at project inception. $10 million to $20 million per year, capitalized as a 25-year obligation. That is $250 million to $500 million, sitting in reserve before you carry a single byte of commercial traffic. Let's put it all together. Total capital expenditure, $600 million to $1.2 billion. before the cable is live, before you have a customer. Annual operating costs, $15 million to $30 million per year. That is $41,000 to $82,000 every single day, just to exist. But wait a moment, this will blow your mind. The ocean is not your biggest ongoing threat. The fishing industry is. Approximately 70% of all submarine cable faults are caused by human activity. Fishing trawlers dragging weighted nets across the seabed, and vessel anchors dragging in storms. These are not freak accidents. They are statistically guaranteed to occur on any major cable route over its 25-year life. When a fault occurs, you mobilize a repair ship. There are about 40 globally. Mobilization takes 2 to 5 days. The ship grapples the cable from depths that can reach 8,000 meters, cuts it, splices in a new section, relays it to the floor. The full operation, 10 to 30 days. Now remember what I said about day rates. A repair ship costs $200,000 to $400,000 per day. A major fault repair runs $3 million to $10 million. And your cable is completely offline for the duration. Marine cargo insurance covers physical damage. It does not cover the revenue lost while your customers rerouted their traffic to a competitor. On a high-capacity cable, that loss runs $500,000 to $2 million per day, uninsured, unrecoverable. And this leads to something even more surprising us because the operators building the most cables right now are not trying to sell bandwidth at all. Google does not build cables to sell bandwidth. It builds cables to stop paying for bandwidth. When Google routes traffic across its own cable, YouTube, Search, Cloud, Gmail, it pays internal cost, not market rate. Google currently owns or holds stakes in more than 30 submarine cable systems. Infrastructure analysts at Bloomberg NEF estimate Google's avoided carrier costs at $800 million to $1.2 billion per year, compared to what it would pay on open commercial markets. Meta's calculation is identical. It owns or co-owns cables circling the entire globe. Meta's internal bandwidth consumption from serving 3 billion daily users would cost $600 million to $900 million annually on open markets. The cables eliminate that bill and replace it with capital expenditure that depreciates over 25 years. And that's before the strategic dimension. When you own the cable, you own the route. When a competitor needs capacity on that corridor, and every alternative is controlled by your infrastructure partners, you set the price, the terms, and the timeline. The cable is not just a cost reduction tool. It is a competitive moat with fiber in it. Commercial operators who sell open market bandwidth charge $50 to $150 per megabit per second per month on major routes. Gross revenue on a 10 terabit per second cable at 60% utilization, $300 million to $900 million per year. Real money, but margin after vessel costs, repair reserves, and debt service runs 15% to 25% in a good year. The hyperscalers are not playing that game. We'll come back to what that means for you in a moment. But first, you need to see what happens when this model breaks down entirely. Flag Telecom, 2002. The company spent $2.8 billion building a 28,000-kilometer fiber optic ring connecting Europe to Asia, the longest privately owned cable system in history. It filed for bankruptcy 18 months after launch. Flag went live at the peak of the dot-com boom. By 2001, the telecom bubble collapsed. Bandwidth prices fell 90% in 18 months. The cable sat in perfect condition on the ocean floor while the company above it ceased to exist. And then there is the Taiwan Strait. February 2023. 2 cables connecting Taiwan to the Matsu Islands were severed within 24 hours of each other. Chinese fishing vessels were identified in the area. No military action was declared. But for the first time in the modern era, the world saw undersea cables used as geopolitical pressure and realized there is no engineering solution to that problem. Here's the thing. Every failure I just described, market collapse, demand miscalculation, deliberate interference, shares one characteristic. You cannot engineer your way out of it. The US FCC now requires certain cable landing licenses to exclude Chinese-owned entities. Australia blocked a Chinese-funded cable to the Solomon Islands in 2018. A route that connects 2 aligned nations today could become a political liability in 10 years. And unlike a data center you can repurpose or sell, a cable on the ocean floor is permanent. The 25-year depreciation schedule your business model depends on assumes the route stays viable for the full 25 years. No government and no insurance policy can guarantee that. So here's the actual question. What does this look like on a spreadsheet? 2 scenarios. Same cable, $800 million total build cost, 25-year life. Optimistic. You sell 60% of capacity at $80 per megabit per second per month. Gross annual revenue, $480 million. Operating costs, $25 million. Debt service on $600 million at 5%, $39 million. Net annual profit, $416 million. Payback, 4 to 5 years. Realistic. 2 competitor cables on the same route launched 6 months before yours. Pricing pressure drops your rate to $50 per megabit. Utilization runs 40% for the first 3 years. Gross revenue, $240 million. Same costs, same debt service. Net annual profit, $176 million. Payback, 9 to 11 years. One cable fault in year 4 adds $8 million in repair costs and $6 million in lost revenue during the 20-day outage. You absorb it, but it resets your timeline. The difference between a good year and a bad year is $240 million. That is not rounding error. That is the difference between paying back your capital in 5 years and still carrying debt in year 12. For most of the internet's history, the cables crossing the ocean were neutral infrastructure. As of 2024, Google and Meta together own or co-own more than 30% of all active international submarine cable capacity. They do not sell that capacity on the open market. They use it exclusively to serve their own platforms. To guarantee YouTube loads faster than a competitor's video, that Google Cloud outperforms AWS on transpacific latency, that Meta's apps stay responsive regardless of what hits the commercial carriers. The internet used to be a highway. It is becoming a private road system, one where the largest platforms own the asphalt and everyone else pays tolls.